Bonjour tout le monde. Welcome. Bienvenue. Good morning, everyone.
Bonjour.
I think one of our first orders of business, or something we should be talking about in the hours ahead, is what we're actually going to call this committee, because I still hear a lot of people calling it FEDCO or the committee that used to be FEDCO or whatever. So I'm open to suggestions on that. As we begin our meeting today, and on behalf of Ottawa City Council, I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the people and land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation and honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. All right, I will now ask the committee coordinator, Melinda, to do a roll call of all members. Thank you.
Councillor Luloff.
Present.
Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Leeper.
Here.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Councillor Dudas, or Drews, sorry.
I'm here, thank you.
Vice Chair Kitts. Here. Mayor.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay. Item number 3, confirmation of minutes. We have the minutes from the committee meetings from November and from other points last year from the IT subcommittee as well. Are those minutes approved? All right. Next we have an update on the Public Order Emergency Commission. And there are people here to answer questions about that. And I know as well, I think there's a motion to add something to this. Is that right? Councillor Luloff, I think you have a motion.
I'll just give me a moment, Mr. Chair.
No problem.
The clerk could put it up on the screen, please. But yes, I do.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Staff had asked Councillor Luloff to move this tactical motion, and we'll be getting that up on the screen shortly.
I have it right here, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Whereas at its meeting on February 7th, 2023, Finance and Corporate Services Committee will consider an information report titled Update on the Public Order Emergency Commission. And whereas document 1 of the report, being institutional reports submitted by the City of Ottawa, includes information about the 2022 Freedom Convoy's impact on residents with disabilities, but this content was inadvertently omitted from the report's accessibility impacts section. Therefore, be it resolved that the report's accessibility impacts section be amended to include the following comments. As noted in document 1, being the City of Ottawa's institutional report, the impact of the convoy on Ottawa's residents, particularly those who live in the downtown core, was well documented in the media and in thousands of emails sent to elected officials at the city during the relevant time. City staff documented common and persistent impacts to residents, including seemingly never-ending noise from horns, fumes from idling trucks, issues with food security, transportation, safety, and mental health. For more information about the impact on residents with disabilities, please see section 5 of document 1, being the impacts of demonstrations in early 2022 on the City of Ottawa, its residents, and businesses. In particular, several accessibility impacts are described under the subsection II, being impact on health. This includes impacts on people with disabilities, isolation, and mental health challenges, the effects of air pollution, the impact on healthcare workers, and the healthcare system. Additional information about the city's supports to vulnerable people with disabilities are described in subsection I, titled Vulnerable People, Human Needs Command Center and Human Needs Task Force. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Luloff. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. Just generally on the whole report, we can ask questions. Yeah, I just want to ask staff, the final paragraph of the report talks about the next steps. We're of course waiting for the commission's report to be released. It certainly goes through the federal process. And the last paragraph says, in our staff report, any findings and recommendations of the commission with implications for the city will be assessed and considered in the context of the Auditor General's recommendations and management responses, and staff will provide further updates to council as necessary. And I just wanted to follow up on those words to ensure that there will be a follow-up report to council, not if staff deem it to be appropriate, but that we do have an opportunity to receive reports similar to the LRT inquiry, where we can get staff to comment on what the federal commission's report says, and we can close the chapter on that matter.
Mayor, if I may, I think it's important to distinguish the commission that was established under the Emergencies Act from, for example, the OLRT Commission, in that the latter was very much directed at the city of Ottawa. The city was at the center of that. The POEC, as we call it, was established by statute. It's a requirement of the Emergencies Act. In essence, it is an after-action report, which is intended, at least according to the Order in Council that established it, to look at the events giving rise to the declaration of the emergency, as well as to make recommendations essentially to the federal government around the justification, the effectiveness of the emergency declaration, and the measures taken pursuant to the emergency declaration. It's for that reason, while the city of Ottawa may well have been the venue for these events, or at least one of the venues, it's important to note that the city of Windsor and the Ambassador Bridge was also a significant focus of the inquiry, as well as the blockades in Coots and along the Pacific Coast Highway. For that reason, and that's why it's framed in that way, it's not expected that there are going to be, for example, recommendations directed at the city or even findings directed at the city. The city participated with the purpose of providing some background information to set out the events themselves and to some extent the steps taken. But unlike the OLRT inquiry, the city of Ottawa really was not the focus. We were a provider of information, and that's why the report is framed in that way, and that we are not really anticipating, given the nature of the inquiry itself and its own statutory mandate, that there are going to be things that are directed at the city in the same way as the recommendations were in the OLRT inquiry.
Yeah, and I appreciate that added context, and I think that's important. All I'm saying, Mr. Mayor, is that in the event that there are comments or recommendations stemming from this commission's report that are directed towards the city of Ottawa, that council has an opportunity through our staff to react to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Gower.
Thank you. I'm going to assume staff are aware of the Ottawa People's Commission report. They've released part 1 of that publicly, and I think there's a part 2 coming in March at some point. I'm curious if that report has been submitted formally in any way to the city, either through the clerk's office or perhaps the mayor's office, if we've received that directly.
Mr. Mayor, I have not received that in my office.
Okay. I think it's an important report, and I think it should form part of our overall record of the occupation and the city's response. I'm not sure what the right mechanism would be to receive that report. Perhaps when the second part is received, it could be information distributed to council or to committee, but I do think it'd be important to formally accept that in some way from the city as either as a part of this report, or perhaps I'm thinking out loud here, perhaps it's more appropriate as a completely separate piece of information, not for debate necessarily by council or committee, but as part of the overall record keeping, archival examination of the convoy. I think it's something important for the city as a corporation to receive at some point. So I'll leave that there and perhaps chat with some of my colleagues in the clerk's office over the next little bit about the right way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Any other questions? Is the report received as amended? What is that? Oh, sorry. I guess first we have to approve Councillor Luloff's motion. So is Councillor Luloff's amendment approved?
Thank you.
Okay, and the report received as amended?
Received as amended.
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to move on now to some budget presentations, and I think Councillor Kitts, you have a couple of procedural motions related to this.
I have at least one. I'll read it out. Whereas the following reports were not distributed with the Finance and Corporate Services Committee agenda, but were posted after the 2023 budget was tabled on February 1st, 2023. 5.1, report titled 2023 Draft Operating and Capital Budget, Finance and Corporate Services Committee was not circulated with the agenda. And 5.2, report titled Report on 2023 Budget Expenses Pursuant to Ontario Regulation 28409 was not circulated with the agenda. Therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to subsection 89.3 of the procedure bylaw, number 2022-410, the Finance and Corporate Services Committee approved the addition of these items.
Thank you, Councillor Kitts. Is the motion carried? All right. So I'll turn it over now to the staff presentation on the budget, the draft operating and capital budget for the Finance and Corporate Services Committee.
Merci, Monsieur Robert, et bon matin, et tous les membres du comité.
Thank you, everyone. I'm here with Sir Rogers. We will do a presentation on the 2023 budget.
I'm now going to pass it over to Sir Rogers, who's going to walk the committee through the budget presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you, Wendy, for the introduction. Can I ask for this presentation to come up? You can go right into the next slide if you don't mind. I'm not sure. Oh. So today I'll go an overview of the overall presentation for the draft 2023 budget for the Finance and Corporate Services Committee. Typically, this is followed with public delegations, but we have none today. Then we'll follow up with questions to staff, and then of course recommend the budget to council. Next slide, please. The Finance and Corporate Services budget includes budgets from several different departments. I'm joined by my colleagues here to address any questions that you may have. In the governance, which includes the mayor's office, councillor's office, city clerks, legal services, and the city manager office. Shared administrative services, this is where you see economic development, corporate real estate, IT, HR, Service Ottawa, and the finance department. The rail construction program is also included in this committee's budget, as well as a number of the non-departmental specific expenditures and revenues. Next slide, please. The net requirement for the governance service area is increasing by $1.3 million in 2023. And this is primarily related to cost of inflation and cost of living, and of course, the additional award that was added in 2023. The net requirement for shared and administrative services is decreasing by $745K. And this is mainly related to a number of one-time reversals in 2022 as we were still going through the pandemic. And of course, there's an additional revenue of $2.2 million for purchasing card revenues also added in 2023. IT-related expenses are mainly related to cost of living, inflationary pressures, and maintenance of our booking system that we leverage across all city services. The rail construction program operating costs are captured in this budget, and these costs are charged back to the Stage 2 capital program. So net funding requirement is zero. So the operating cost comes in, and we charge it back to the capital program for Stage 2. The total requirement for non-departmental is increasing by $28.8 million. And this is mainly driven by contributions to reserves. And again, some one-time reversals from 2022 related to the pandemic response. The total revenue for property taxes is increasing by $42.2 million. This is the 2.2% assessment growth that we covered on budget tabling. And the overall new tax levy revenue is increasing by 49.8 million. And this is reflective of the 2.5% property tax levy increase. Next slide. As mentioned on the previous slide, much of the increases is for maintaining current services is due to contract settlements, cost of living increases, increments, benefit changes, and inflation. The contribution to capital aligns with the long-range financial plans for tax-supported assets, which is increasing by 5 million, with an additional 9.5 million for inflation at a 6.33% inflationary rate for 2023. Tax increases also for city, police, transit services, as per the council approved direction of 2.5% for the tax levy. On the growth side, the budget does include growth-related expenditures and revenues. The contribution to capital includes an additional 1 million contribution to tax-supported assets for growth in the asset base. The VUT program is also captured. There's a net of 4.4 million VUT contributed to the housing reserve for affordable housing. And the overall assessment growth, again, is increasing by 42.2 million, which is your 2.2% increase for 2023. Next slide. There's also discretionary savings related to travel, office supplies, conferences, and other discretionary spending elements. In this budget, there's $295,000 of discretionary savings in the finance and corporate services budget. In addition, there's $2.2 million of savings related to the recent organizational realignment. And there's a number of revenue increases that are increasing across various sources, such as POA, user fees, and purchasing card rebates. Next slide, please. The draft 2023 capital budget includes $13.6 million of renewal for assets, $375,000 for service enhancements, for a total of a $14 million budget, capital budget for 2023. Next slide. 12.9 million, or 92% of the capital budget, is funded by cash reserves, and 1.1 million is funded by debt, which reflects 8%. This 1.1 million is related to renewal buildings for those replacements works that is categorized as tangible assets. Next slide. The draft 2023 budget includes 3.1 million for life cycle renewal replacement for works in the general government, such as city facilities as Ben Franklin, Constellation, and City Hall. 10.5 million investment for the city's IT infrastructure and technology transformations, such as the city's ERP system. And there's 375,000 for service enhancements related to installation of accessibility features in existing general government facilities. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions about the presentation? Okay, Councillor Gower.
Thank you. I have a few, just looking for additional details. So you mentioned the $2.2 million savings, which is related to the combining of the Innovative Services and Finance Services Department. Has that savings already been allocated elsewhere, or is that an amount that we might be able to do something with?
Mr. Mayor, so first off, the savings is already allocated. That's reflected in the non-departmental section of this budget. And just for a point of clarification, I should have mentioned in my presentation, the actual budget book is not aligned to the new structure. The new structure was announced 8 days before we tabled. So we never had the opportunity to kind of shift around the structure of the templates, just for as a FYI. That will flow through in the final book.
Okay, I was really hoping we might have just found 2.2 million to put towards affordable housing, but we'll keep looking. Page 38, it's supply services operating resource requirement. There's revenue listed of 2.99 million, which is up significantly from last year, which was 785,000. What is that? What is the revenue included on that line?
Mr. Mayor, this is what we refer to as our purchasing card revenue that we get back. So to be right simple, basically we have a corporate credit card program in the city where we purchase easy, like the tangible assets in terms of the supplies that we need to operate our business. And then we get a rebate based on certain thresholds that we meet. So this was established going back to 2017, 2018 timeframe. So we've been looking at our historical averages, our actuals over the years, and we've been actually increasing that revenue. So this is an increase to that budget for this year.
Is that likely to be the same next year and the year after? Or is this kind of a one-off improvement?
Over the years, it slightly grows. So once we get a good snapshot of a 3, 4, 5-year average, then we can kind of increase that. So now it's at a good level. That's kind of our 5-year average run rate. So we look at that every year. Now is the time to kind of increase that budget.
Okay. Page 46, that's the revenue from service from user fees. And the one that just jumped out was a 22% change for expenses for tax sale proceedings. Every other one was 2%. That one was 22%. Why is that one going up by much more?
That one's related to actual costs recovered through the process. So that's a reflection of what's happening in the marketplace with respect to those.
Due to rising property costs, land costs, and so on?
Yes.
Okay. Page 50, there's a line, it's payroll, pensions, and benefits, and there's a line, 400,000 in revenue from provincial sources. What is that program, or what is that amount?
So, Mr. Mayor, this is our our payroll department obviously supports Ottawa Public Health. So we're doing a lot of support in terms of the initiative that they're responding to the pandemic. So that's the allocation of that funding back to payroll department.
Okay, thank you. And the last one is page 56, which is non-departmental operating resource requirements. The line is on transfers, grants, financial charges, and it's a change of 17.8 million over 2022. Is that contributions to reserves? Is that what that represents?
Mr. Mayor, yes, that's the bulk of that contribution is the contribution to our operating reserves, our capital reserves, sorry.
Okay, thank you. And I had some questions I asked earlier this week. Thank you to finance staff for providing those answers as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. I think that people would like to know about the extra tax revenue and how and where is it coming from? Is this new properties that are infill, or is this new growth in greenfields? Where is that revenue coming from?
Mr. Mayor, assessment growth effectively is any new house that's built. So any new house that will now be functional, living, taking the benefits, paying a property tax bill in 2023 is what that assessment growth reflects. So any new house or residential commercial property that is brought onto the base in 2022 that effectively will be part of the tax roll in 2023.
But do we have a breakdown of where they are? Because I'm wondering if it's new developments out in, further out, or is it infill?
It's Mr. Mayor, it's largely spread across the city, but I can certainly take away and see if we actually have a breakdown by ward, I guess, if we can get that level of detail and report back.
Thank you. The reason I'm asking is because I want to know what services are required if it's new developments, like if there's a whole new section. This is, it's going to be more costs, maintaining roads and sewers, etc., as opposed to infill, which would use existing services. So it does make a difference on our budget. So it would be helpful to know where that growth is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanaugh. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to staff for the presentation this morning, the first of many over this month. I have a few questions. Regrettably, my budget does not have page numbers, so I'm just going to have to do my best to refer to the item. And the first is regarding the budget line realty initiatives and development. This is in the corporate real estate office page, and we're proposing perhaps you could talk to me about sort of the budget revenue estimates for 2023, as well as the expenditures, the type of like what's incorporated in the expenditure line, what makes up costs in addition to staff. Perhaps this line is paired with some additional budget information that's further in the FEDCO budget. But if you could just talk to that for a minute, and then I'll have some follow-up questions.
Thank you for the question. In terms of the makeup, it's a variety of things, includes, includes acquisition of land and buildings to support city services and initiatives. There's environmental remediation costs, soil management of city-owned land, oversight of our leasing portfolio, number of valuations and appraisals required. Yeah, so it's a variety. If you want to go into more detail, I could have Mr. Radke break it down further for you.
I'm just want to make sure I understand further into the budget document. It specifically mentions the Ottawa Lands Development Corp. According to my budget, we're estimating revenues of $5 million in 2023, which seems lower than past years. Sale of surplus land. Maybe you can explain that separate budget line, because that's a revenue line as well, 1.5 million, down from last year's forecast of 9 million. What are we estimating to bring in next year due to the sale of surplus lands? Is it specifically, what's the difference between the 5 million figure and the $1.5 million figure?
Thank you for the follow-up. So the 5 million is an annual target that has existed for a number of years. I'll ask Mr. Radke to speak to what the projections are looking for this year and the distinction in terms of the 1.5 million.
Thank you, Don. Mr. Mayor, the separation between the two revenue targets, one is for OCLDC, and it is a set amount of 5 million to cover costs, and it really depends. We generally hit over that. It just depends on what we can bring to the market. The sale of surplus lands are general sales, so that might be little remnants, pieces that the city owns that we dispose of throughout the year. And that is just a general revenue sale, so it doesn't go through the OCLDC.
How often are sale targets reviewed? We, as a committee and council, don't know the volume or the quantity of properties that could be deemed surplus to our needs and ultimately sold. How often is that reviewed to ensure that the target matches reality?
We put together a work plan every year to go through potential sales that we can bring to the market, both through OCLDC and our general revenue sales. And we do an annual, I'll call it a scrub of what we have in our inventory in terms of general surplus lands. And every once in a while, some lands pop up where a resident might live next to an abandoned right of way or alleyway that they'd like to purchase, and then we work towards the sale of that also.
Okay, so just to go back, OLDC 5 million, sale of surplus land 1.5, so that's 6.5. Going back to my original question, the realty initiatives and development, Mr. Herwire, is that mostly the acquisition of new land, or is that more of the remedial site costs?
Mr. Mayor, the bulk of that budget is our environmental remediation. That's a unit within realty initiatives and development. And that's the remediation of various lands that have been that have some environmental issues. So that's our biggest budget item.
Okay. And my last question, Mayor, is regarding a line that's identified as 100 Constellation lease, $6.4 million. How many, can someone talk to me again globally about rent that we're paying in various facilities? This is a big budget line, but obviously I assume we use the whole building. Are we doing a cost benefit analysis of continuing to pay leases versus owning buildings outright? If you could just give me a global answer in that regard.
Mr. Mayor, I'll be specific on the Constellation because that's a lease to own. And so I believe in 2029, 2026, yes, there'll be a payment to the owner, final payment, and we'll make that payment, then we'll own that one. So that's a lease to own situation. In terms globally, we, in acquisition leases, we will always, work with the client department that's looking for space. We don't have any client departments lining up to acquire new space, obviously. So we're always working with them to make sure we first look internally before we go external for any type of acquisition lease.
I appreciate the information to my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation today. I wanted to just address the two Lansdowne items that are in the under the city manager's office in this budget report. So one, it appears there's an $875,000 spend. I think we had approved 8 million in spending previously as a council, but in the two line items I'm seeing under the city manager's office, there's authority for 875,000. So I don't know if that's just a typo. It should be 8.75 or not, but I'm just wondering what that $875,000 is for the Lansdowne spend and what that's being spent on.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor, just for clarification, is that in the WIP section of the report?
It's under the city manager's office, Lansdowne Park Revitalization 2.0.
Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, I'll take that away and come back to you if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean today.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fine. No problem. I'll just maybe I'll ask some other questions then. Below that line, there's a $332 million debt authority for Lansdowne as well. So $332.6 million. Has the municipality taken out that debt formally through the debenture committee at this point?
Mr. Mayor, the answer is no to that question, but I'm going to get Isabel to kind of answer your first question, if that's okay.
That's fine. So the answer is, sorry, is no to the first, no to the second question?
That's right. We have not issued that debt.
Okay, yeah. The debt's not issued.
Yeah.
Would you like me to wait?
No, you can keep going.
Okay, fine. So I just, what I'm trying to get at, I guess, with the first question is we had approved 8 million and I'd like to know what we've spent of that 8 million so far. But then in the project description of the budget, we also have this $875,000 spend. So I just want to know the difference between those two and what we've spent so far, those two line items.
So the 875,000 relates to the previous work. So the work that was leading up to the the May report last year, that was the budget for that. The 8 million is for the follow-on post that report.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. Of the 8 million that was approved last term of council, how much of that has been spent?
So, Mr. Mayor, the report that we have in our budget book is as of end of August. So at that time, none of that would have been spent because the report was just approved in May. What we will do is when we report back to our disposition, and I can actually provide the whips at December 31st before council, if you like. It's just a timing in terms of when we do our budget book, in terms of when we do a final report. So in that report, as of December 31st, you'll see if there's any spending occurring by then.
Okay, but the 8 million isn't in this budget anywhere right now. That we had approved last May.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of the whips because it would have been pre-approved. So it's not an item to be approved in this specific budget.
Okay.
So it's captured as a whip program.
Okay, thanks for that. Obviously, Lansdowne hasn't been consulted on. And we're saying we're in a period of fiscal restraint. The $332.6 million debt authority, if there's going to be changes through those consultations and discussions, the process would be that may go up or down, and then we go back to the debenture committee to take on that $332 million debt, or what's the process to this point?
So it goes to the debenture committee once after the construction work is done. So the debt authority is approved as part of the budget. So when it goes back to council for approval, whether it goes up or down, that's when the debt authority gets approved. And then throughout the construction, we pay for the works and then we issue the debt afterwards. And that's when it goes to debenture committee. So the debt authority is already approved before it goes to debenture committee.
Okay. Before he left, Steve Willis identified costs as the greatest risk for the project. Costs overruns, future costs as the large risk here. Are we planning to mitigate this risk in the near future? And, I guess how will consultations be operated in order to get at what the public wants? Because something's been approved without any consultation. Obviously, we've got a lot of money in the budget coming for it. I suspect there'll be changes given feedback. What are your concerns with the risks of cost overruns for the project? And how will the consultations inform those discussions around total authority for debt and spending on the project?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start, and if Isabel or Wendy want to add. So as directed last summer, we will be coming back to this committee and council with an updated business plan, if you will, looking at all those cost issues. There were a number of directions and motions that were provided to staff to look at that have costs associated with them. The green roof access, affordable housing targets, to name a couple. So in terms of engagement, we'll be starting off getting folks caught up with that concept that was tabled last summer. And then, finding out what is important to our residents in terms of a future Lansdowne, looking at that, bringing forward ultimately a report that looks at all those asks and balances those costs, and ultimately council will weigh in on that.
Thanks very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My first question, I guess, is probably to Cyril, and I asked this, I think, last week at council, but now that we're starting our budget consultations, can you provide a little bit more detail, Cyril, as to how city staff are going to support the new working group composed of the mayor, the chair of audit, and whoever the councillor at large is going to be to find efficiencies in the city?
Mr. Mayor, so I think, to be clear, I think the councillor is speaking to the service framework and review that we highlighted in the transmittal report. So from a staff perspective, once that, I'll call it, working group is established, obviously I'll be part of that working group. And then depending on what areas we focus on. So if we focus on a certain area of the business, the respective finance team will support me and that group as we go through that due diligence and review, and obviously get the input with that working group, the Mr. Mayor, Councillor at Large, City Manager's office. So that'll be established shortly thereafter if the budget is adopted on March 1st.
Okay, thank you very much. My next question, the city's identified approximately 356 million in new debt that we're going to take on this year. Given that interest rates are rising, do we have a strategy for timing of the issuing of this debt?
Mr. Mayor, yes. So what the budget does is it seeks the authority to add debt to our portfolio, if you will. That doesn't mean that we actually go out and issue debt. When we do go through the issuance process, we do report back, and we do monitor the markets to make sure that we capitalize on the rates. Rates are increasing this year, but you got to treat debt as more of a longer term strategy in terms of historical rates, future looking rates. Obviously, we have no indication in terms of what the future rates will go, but we will always report back when we do the debt issuance, and we always kind of manage the risk and mitigate the risk, with interest rates being one of those mitigation strategies.
Okay, thank you. My next question here, the city's increasing our contribution to the citywide reserve for capital assets well above the 2.5% increase. And I know we have an infrastructure deficit at the city. So with the increase in investment, are we going to start catching up on that deficit and to close it with the current council approved plan?
Mr. Mayor, yes. So we are still tracking to the long range financial plans for tax and rate and the housing. Specifically for tax, we are making that additional contribution as per the plan, and that plan is still on track to close that infrastructure gap by 2026. So effectively, yes, we're continuing to remove the backlog and get to that threshold by 2026.
What's the annual deficit right now in terms of investment?
Are you referring to the overall city position or the infrastructure?
The infrastructure.
Roughly right now, we are around, originally when the long range financial plan was tabled, we had a $70 million infrastructure gap. It was 125 versus the need of 195, excluding inflation. So we are 3 years away. So effectively, we're about between 15 and 20 million away from that gap that we're going to close.
Okay, thank you. My next question, I'll try to rhyme these off quickly, Mr. Mayor. There are 320 new FTEs being budgeted in 2023. Do we have a breakdown as to how many of these new FTEs are directly funded from property taxpayers?
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest I point you back to the transmittal report. In the transmittal report, we created several different tables which highlights the breakdown of those resources. And there's about 38 that are funded from the property tax roll, but a little bit of a caveat. Paramedics, there's 14 paramedics within that 38. 50% of the paramedic funding does come from the province. Then the majority of the other FTEs, we have it broken down in terms of other sources outside of the tax. So the significant increase would be on the community social services side, which are funded by provincial funding. And of course, there's a number of different FTEs there for other revenue sources, but the details are pretty good in the transmittal. If you do have further questions, you can reach out to me if that's okay.
Thank you very much. In terms of making the budget a little easier to read for the public and council colleagues, what are we doing to actually make those improvements? Like where are we going? How are we going to make sure that if we open this, we don't have to be experts in municipal budgeting to actually decipher and pull information out?
Mr. Mayor, what you'll see included in this budget, again, in the transmittal, we did include a budget guide or how to read the budget. That's a small step in terms of helping residents and councillors understand that. Through this feedback and through the councillor consultations that we're going through, we're looking at other opportunities and avenues like how do we kind of make that beast of a document, pardon my words, more user friendly, some sort of more of a summary level. So we're taking that feedback and trying to figure out how to consolidate that detail. The challenge is always with, the significant detail that we do publish at relatively one of the lowest levels. It's hard then to kind of come back up out of that to make it more understandable. So we're taking that feedback and planning to have another announcement in 2024 to kind of slowly make it more understandable.
Perfect. Thank you. I look forward to seeing that. Councillor Brockington quickly touched on the sale of surplus land. Can I just get from staff an explanation as to where the proceeds of those sales go?
Some of those proceeds go to our capital reserve, so they help fund our capital program. And ultimately, they also go to, there's a contribution to the housing as well as per one of the policies. Mr. Radke, I'm not sure if you want to top me up.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, our disposal policy requires the surplus sales revenue to go to the general to the general revenue account. We do, I believe, a percentage goes to housing, and now a percentage goes to rec and culture.
Okay, thank you. 2 more questions, Mr. Mayor, and then I'll be quiet for the rest of the meeting, I promise. We've budgeted investment income of 326 million, but it's unchanged even though interest rates are going up. Is there a reason for that?
Again, Mr. Mayor, this item and similar to the sale of surplus land item as well, is we look at not a 1-year view. We try and look at our historical averages as well, because we do budget on a base budget perspective. If we increase it 1 year and then it goes down the other year, we're basically doing more of the peaks and valleys. So we kind of streamline our process to make sure that there's not too much risk by inflating it this year just to come back and create a pressure the following year. So we monitor that. We also provide that update throughout the year in our quarterly status reports. And of course, in our Q2 reports, where we provide guidance on our forecast. So we kind of monitor that risk to kind of make sure that we don't take too much risk and inflating it just for this year. And then next year, if the rates go the other way, we got to come back with a pressure.
And my last question, given that we borrow every year, would it be prudent to use some of that investment cash to lower the amount that we're borrowing overall?
Mr. Mayor, I'll ask my colleague Isabel to assist me in this one.
So much of the investments are related to our reserves. So they are committed for capital projects. Credit rating agencies look at our liquidity. It's a significant factor that they look at in terms of our overall rating. We have to maintain sufficient liquidity to manage year-over-year fluctuations. So we do manage it as best we can and balance it with appropriate sustainability factors that credit rating agencies look at.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. You've been generous with time, so I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of the questions I had are asked. Thank you very much for the asking them and for the answers. The one question I'm going to ask is about the vacant unit tax, and what I'm seeing is, I think, an assumption in the budget, but I know we're getting a little more lengthy report on it. And I know that we just received a memo indicating that 70% of property taxpayers have gone on and made their declaration. However, we were told when we approved it that it would cost about 8 million. We would bring in 32 million. The net cost, net income would be about 24 million. That's what I remember. Can you just explain to me what part of the vacant unit tax that you mentioned in your presentation is a part of this budget? And is it really just an assumption, or is this unknown?
So, Mr. Mayor, the 25 million was over, I think that was over 5 years. So what you have in the budget is the 4.4 million contribution to the housing reserve. That's net of the cost to run the program. So approximately, I think it's 6.6 or so is the total revenue that we're expected to come in. But of course, we need to remove the operating costs in terms of supporting program for a net 4.4. As you alluded to, we will be back, I think is in May timeframe with a follow-up report in terms of the status. And I think the latest number that we reported was 76%, which was as of a week and a half ago. So the numbers are looking good.
Right. So what I'm hearing just by the way you're talking about this is that assumption, you're pretty confident of this.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the team for the presentation. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, okay, thank you. So I have two questions. So one is I'm interested in exploring, just as an understanding, the health of our human resources. So, you know, I'd like to understand what sort of the trends have been with respect to filling vacancies. As I'm speaking to many departments, they're describing to me that they are currently experiencing vacancies, and we do know there's a labor shortage. So how has the City of Ottawa been able to maintain its status as a competitive employer, and whether or not we're predicting any challenges with that? And I'd love to understand, you know, both within the bureaucracy, but also within the trades that are supporting many of our activities. I think there is something to be looked at there. So could I get an understanding of a trend?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I mean, the City of Ottawa is like any other organization. There is a real challenge in the marketplace in terms of getting talent, and that's across the board. I can speak to, you know, from a finance perspective and corporate services, it is challenging to find resources. There's quite a demand out there. We still invest in our people, invest in our organization. We do have some additional support in HR for 2023 to kind of help us go through some of the job evaluation criteria, the health and safety of our workforce, et cetera. So we're continuing to invest in that area, but we are challenged like any other organization. It's a challenge that I speak to my colleagues across public sector and private sector. It's a challenge that everyone's managed. There is no answer. The reality is it's a tough market in terms of resources and finding resources, but we're continuing to kind of put a focus on that lens and that aspect.
And are we taking any creative steps when it comes to the type of qualifications that people might need to present, whether that's formal schooling versus experience? Are we having the doors open to those conversations within departments so that we're sure that we're casting a wide net?
Mr. Mayor, yes, obviously we always ensure that depending on the job, that the qualifications and the experience and education matches the skill set required. I can speak to, from a finance perspective, we do partake in different initiatives with universities CPA, that's a certified public accounting designation. So we do work with different organizations in terms of, attracting talent and kind of, selling the organization, because it's a great organization to work. So we do kind of cast that broad net, and that's true for all different skill sets and resources. We are part of many associations, from professional engineering associations to project management associations, et cetera.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of the other camp. So people who, we have actually quite a strong workforce that are in their 50s and 60s that have experienced layoffs in various places, or, retracting trades, retracting opportunities that are perhaps maybe less qualified in terms of education, formal education. I'm wondering if we have an opportunity to are people able to apply? I mean, the way that people apply right now is through a website. It's kind of skewed to those who understand how to navigate a system. We want to make sure that we are as accessible as possible. What kind of supports do we have for people who are perhaps less technically inclined or have various abilities that could participate otherwise?
Mr. Mayor, maybe if it's okay, I can take it as a takeaway and come back with some of those strategies, and maybe even learn a bit more about some of your ideas, so we can maybe consider focusing on some sort of trade shows, job shows, et cetera, to kind of reach those needs, if that works.
Yeah, I mean, I that would be great. I mean, it could be trades and it could be otherwise. I just think we do need to be creative, and I don't think that rigidity is going to get us very far. And of course, the reason why I continue on about this is because my personal interest is always to rebuild trust and our reputational risk of having, a city that is not attractive to work for really does impact our bottom line. We end up having to outsource or contract out services that can be exceedingly more expensive than if we were to do them in-house. And there's always trade-offs there. So I think it is given that it is an enormous part of our expenditures, we should be thinking very carefully about how we do that. And then my other question is again on the lands company. So I'd like to understand with the new mandate that Mr. Mayor has put forward for this lands company, how that has impacted either this budget or how we imagine it might impact future budgets when it comes to how we use our lands within that company.
Yeah, I'm happy to start, Councillor. So we haven't made any changes to the budget as of yet because we haven't fully flushed out what that new corporation is going to look like, as well as the terms of reference associated with it. The mayor spoke to that, I believe, in his address a week or two ago, and that's work that's going to be undertaken in the next coming weeks and months, and bring that forward to council. And I'll just ask Mr. Mayor if there's anything you wanted to add.
No, I think you've covered it. I think, as you know, Councillor Johnson, we're excited about the opportunity to work on this, and we'll engage with everyone about what that could look like, and including the terms of reference and the opportunities we might have to move forward on. So there'll be more to come on that in the days and weeks ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I look forward to being on the board to have those types of conversations. And it's an opportunity to flag that come 2024, we might have a very different conversation about how we use land, and it may impact the way that we create revenues and expenses, and it will be something to consider when looking for 2024. So thank you very much. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First of all, great work on the budget. I always do concern myself when it comes to IT, because I've lived through the dancing bananas and the DDoS denial of service attacks. And I know we constantly increased funding in the way of security and audit and testing. Is this a sufficient amount because it is our backbone now for sure. I mean, we're doing everything online, and to lose access to our own systems would be concerning. Do we feel confident in this is an appropriate budget to keep the systems up and also to fend off any kind of ransomware attacks?
Mr. Mayor, the simple answer is yes. I mean, we do have in this budget, you do see 2 additional resources for what we label as a CISO, so the security organization. So myself and Sandra, our CIO, are working closely, kind of moving that strategy forward and moving that work forward. A lot of work has been done, and now this budget gives us that beefed up resources to kind of continue moving it forward and keep making sure we are secure.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few more questions. The Hydro Ottawa dividend is something we need to take close look at. And what's being budgeted this year is, I understand, the minimum contribution that they are supposed to be making. And can staff just talk about what happens if Hydro doesn't generate a profit or generates a profit below $20 million? What is the payment expectation to the City of Ottawa?
So, Mr. Mayor, 20 million is the baseline. So they're required to make that payment irrespective of they're below that profit or above that threshold.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. The Provincial Offences Act, does this include tickets that were issued during the truckers' protest last year?
Yes, that would capture some of those tickets, yes.
And can I just have information about our plan to collect from individuals who have not yet paid tickets, have no intent to pay? What are our options to receive those funds?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to, okay, David, you can.
Mayor, those, like any other ticket, whether it be issued under Part 1, Part 2, or Part 3 of the Provincial Offences Act, there are certain initial processes that, and without getting into all the details, tickets can maybe paid up front if you've ever received one. But they may also require trial, for example. And so the revenue that you see from any particular ticket, it might be generated right up front, or it might take some time. Alternatively, of course, there are costs that go along with that. We don't tend to track individual tickets or anything like that, but there are mechanisms available under the Provincial Offences Act that allow recovery, depending on the nature of the ticket, by plate suspension, license suspension, and those are the kinds of mechanisms that the city and any other municipality tend to employ to ensure collection of fines, either imposed at the outset or after trial.
Despite the volume of tickets issued, I just want to see clarification from the city that it is the city's intention to seek payment from people who have not declared whether they've paid the ticket or indicated they'd like a court date. If they've just been silent, it is the city's intent to ensure we get our revenues from these tickets. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. The budget line below that is the automated speed enforcement line. There's 0 identified in 2023. Is this covered off someplace else?
Mr. Mayor, so the automated speed enforcement, I don't know what page you're looking at, apologize for that, but there is incremental revenue coming in 2023. There's additional costs, support costs for the program, and there's a contribution to the road safety reserve as per the policy and the report that was approved. So there is incremental revenue. I'm not sure if the line item is net 0 because the cost and the expense ultimately nets out to 0 because
I'm going to guess that my hard to read page number is 51. I just see the very top of the number, but it's non-departmental operating resource requirement, and it lists a number of revenues: hydro dividends, Provincial Offences Act, red light camera, automated speed enforcement, Rideau Carleton Raceway, lottery fees. For the automated speed enforcement line, it's 0. So maybe I'm reading the wrong page, but I just want to make sure we are budgeting revenues in 2023.
Yes, I can confirm we are budgeting revenues. The revenues I think are in some of that is in the traffic services area, and there's a contribution to the road safety reserve. So I can certainly take it away and follow up with you after for the details on that, if that works.
Excellent. So, Mr. Mayor, maybe I could just ask staff by way of follow-up by email, what's the total amount of revenues we're expecting to accrue in 2023? How much will go to road safety initiatives and I guess other?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll take that away and I'll get that to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor King.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'd like to thank staff for the in-depth work that they've undertaken on this budget, and also to my colleagues for asking and a wide array of exhaustive questions that have really pointed out some of the issues in this budget and has really some of the questions that I was going to ask. But I do have one, and that revolves around the business and technical support services item in the Planning, Real Estate, and Economic Development Office's operating budget. There's an increase of $75,000, and I was just wondering what those funds are for, whether those funds are for developing the 3D modeling that we were talking about during the official plan process, or other types of engagements.
Mr. Mayor, that would be predominantly our cost of living adjustments. So that would be cost of living and inflation increases for that department, or for that service area, sorry.
Okay, so I was just curious, what would the allocation be for some of those programs that we're talking about, the 3D modeling and other items that we have been talking about in the official plan?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thanks for the question. I think those details you'll find in the Planning and Housing Committee. I can follow up with you directly, but there are funds set aside for that work to support the official plan and the new zoning bylaw, for instance.
I appreciate that. And just one more question. Obviously, we're going to have application process changes because of the imposition of Bill 23. What does the spend look like to address that in terms of the budget before us?
Mr. Mayor, so that's an item that will be in the planning committee, in the planning budget.
Appreciate that. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Menard.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure I'm on the right section here. The service review framework, is that under this item? And in order to ask questions about now, or is it a future item that I'm missing?
Mr. Mayor, I think it would be now would be a good time to speak to it.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Thanks very much. So I wanted to just walk through this a little bit because the service review has been tabled, and obviously it's a bit different than what we were originally considering at council. One of the principles that came up was the Auditor General's involvement during those discussions. So under the current model for the service review, is the Auditor General able to take part in that process as she was outlining previously? Or is this now she's not able to take part because we're involving city staff, other departments, and that would be a conflict?
Thanks for that question. It would really be at the Auditor General's discretion. We can't direct the work of that office. So they would have to make a decision as to whether they wanted to participate.
Okay. Is the AG or any representative here with us today? No? Okay. So my understanding from what the AG had previously said is that she wouldn't participate in an exercise that of this sort if it wasn't directed by her office with other departments. So I think that's consistent with what we're seeing here, is that likely she will not be participating in this, and if only to audit the process later. So that is a concern for me. I want the AG involved. I think, you know, we said that that's what we had wanted previously, and I do have some concerns about her not being involved. The other concerns, I guess, that exist within this report for me are the big idea seems to be contracting out or more P3s. That seems to be the big idea in these documents and what we're lining up for. And so Principle 4 states the overall goal of the review is to build and support a competitive culture within the corporation and its operations, not service level cuts. So what does a competitive culture mean? And how does it benefit residents?
That's not necessarily the focus that we're looking at here, Councillor, in terms of the framework that we have before you and the principles. It's really around challenging ourselves in terms of how we do our business. And that challenge can take many functions, as you know. It's looking at the processes. I think process mapping is huge in terms of how we do things, how we approach things. Are we doing them the most efficiently? and then putting those ideas forward to the committee to say, here's what we've looked at, here's an efficiency we have found, we can save X number of dollars, and that money then can be freed up to go to other priorities if that's the case.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, that's more in line with what I was comfortable seeing as that type of review. I'm not seeing it as reflected in the document as I guess would be helpful. And I think I'll work with staff on a motion for council, but just to highlight some of the issues that I'm seeing. The service delivery options for consideration are internal as is, internal re-engineering, managed competition, contracting out, and P3s. That's what the report states. And so one of the big savings that we may potentially have with this term of council is actually not listed here, which is, I guess, P3s that we were running through the SIP program and through a brownfield program representing tens of millions and more of dollars in a pipeline into the future. Those sorts of things should also be, I think, highlighted in the principles, and that would be more of a change to a current P3 and looking at a different type of in-house model. Do you foresee that this process could lead to those types of changes as well? Or is this only sort of looking at more contracting out, more P3s and private sector involvement in public delivery of services?
Yeah, that's correct. We would look at everything. And what we'd like to do is, I'm going to say, a bit of a grocery list in terms of some of the things that we think we could hit that are larger items, to bring those forward to the committee to start with. Remember, this is going to take us through the term of council. It's going to take us some time to get through this, but we do plan to take a look at everything.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think it would be helpful to work together on some language just to highlight those things, because I don't see that type of thing really reflected in the document as it stands before council. But I did, Mayor, we just had the LRT report come out, and there were some pretty jarring things in there that we talked about when it comes to the LRT. We relied on the private sector to build and maintain it, and the report states that it led to a situation where the party's attention was diverted to protecting their legal rights instead of opening a reliable LRT. It also talked about the fact that if we hadn't used that scheme to procure the LRT, it would have been possible to pick a better vehicle, but it hindered our options because that P3 was selected in that way. The other piece that they had mentioned is around the commercial confidentiality used to justify secrecy that occurs with these programs. And I remember asking for information in this P3 and couldn't get it because of that commercial confidentiality. And then finally, the report found that Deloitte's report did not fully consider the disadvantages associated with P3 model for the delivery of the LRT, and that the downsides were not thoroughly analyzed. And so I don't want to get into a situation where we're contracting out P3's more city services, where we just have a very important LRT report in front of us that says we should be really considering these types of risks. So if I can, Mayor, I just want to ask staff to work with me in advance of council to, I guess, ameliorate some of the documents that have been put forward to make sure it's a breadth of options that is better reflected in the type of service review that we've just discussed. And maybe perhaps the AG's involvement too. I can discuss that with staff before council as well. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to go back on surplus lands and see if I understand. You mentioned answering a previous question about some of the general revenue goes to housing. How is it treated if the actual surplus land is used for housing? How do you do that on the books? Is that a contribution? For example, if it's near transit and it's ideal for affordable housing, how is that treated?
Mr. Mayor, when we use city land for affordable housing, then there wouldn't be a contribution towards the housing fund. The 25% of net revenue that goes would be when we sell land to somebody else.
Yeah, no, okay, I can understand that. But is that our contribution to when we're selling land to a nonprofit? Is that our contribution? How is it done on the books? Do we, give it to them for $1 because we're being nice, or do we take the land value? How is it done?
I believe we take it as it's the full contribution goes towards our housing at that point, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, but I'm trying to understand, if you value a piece of land at $1 million, does that consider to be a contribution to affordable housing? Or is, I just wanted to understand that.
Yeah,
That's correct.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just for a little bit of clarity. So if it's $1 million, it wouldn't be a cash transaction if we quasi give it to them at a value. So we wouldn't collect $1 million and then put it to housing. It would actually be considered at the fair market value directly to the housing affordability.
Okay, but that's what's generally done. Okay, that's what I wanted to understand. And I understand it's on the books and it's not really a cash transaction. I just wanted to understand if we, just swallow it, or we say that that's the contribution to affordable housing. And the reason I want to know is because we have 15 million that we're putting to affordable housing, and is that counted into it?
Mr. Mayor, no, that 15 million is a direct contribution. Then things above and beyond that is incremental contributions based on the other policies.
Okay, so if we sold off a piece of land to a nonprofit for affordable housing, that would be over and above.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanaugh. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, and sorry, Councillor King. It is a bit exhaustive, but just you can blame Councillor Menard because he brought in the service review framework here, and so now I've got just a couple more questions. And because I'm on Zoom, I can really see the reactions to what's happening right now very closely around your face. I just want to bring up page 14 in the service review framework as well. So we've got here on the third paragraph, whenever feasible, each review will incorporate a strong challenge function by volunteer industry experts from internal public and private organizations. And I just want to, I think that there's something to dive into a little bit here too. And so perhaps I might ask, we've had a pretty robust conversation about how the city attracts private volunteer supports or experts to review. So we had a very long conversation about transit commissioners, for example, and we weren't able to attract the volunteer private industry experts that we were after. And so my question is, how will this be similar or different to our experience there? And how might we be able to consider perhaps our advisory committee review? So we're undergoing that with council representatives in the next 3-4 weeks with Rick O'Connor. And perhaps there's something to be considered for how we might strengthen those advisory committees to reflect some of the needs presented in this document. Is there a question there? I don't know. I think the question is, whether or not we could speak further about that, whether that's through permission from Rick O'Connor, permission from the mayor, permission from whomever else wrote this thing.
Mr. Mayor, I'll start and maybe staff can follow. Absolutely, this would be an opportunity, I think, with the members working group that are dealing with that issue. So these things could get raised during that process.
Thank you for that. That's satisfaction.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. If there are no other questions, then I'll ask Councillor Kitts to introduce the motion. I don't think you have to read the whole motion. We'll put it on the screen.
So do you want me to go through each item and then?
If you just want to read the first paragraph, that would be great.
That the Finance and Corporate Services Committee recommend that Council, sitting as Committee of the Whole, approve the Finance and Economic Development Committee 2023 draft operating and capital budget as follows.
Okay, is the motion carried? Thank you. All right, let's move on to item 5.2, report on 2023 budget expenses pursuant to Ontario Regulation 28409. Are there any questions about that? Okay, is the recommendation carried? Item 6 is the Finance and Corporate Services Committee terms of reference. Any questions on that? Okay, is the recommendation carried? We have no in-camera items. Item number 8 is information previously distributed. Are those reports received? Okay, are there any notices of motion? Not aware of any. Okay, are there any inquiries? Is there any other business? Okay, motion to adjourn then, please. Councillor Kitts. Okay. Carried. Thank you, everyone. Merci beaucoup.